Hello, I'm Samsak1, and this video is going to look worse than 144p. And I know what you're thinking when you hear that, like how is it possible to go below 144p? That's the minimum setting on YouTube, right? But here's the crazy thing, we're going to have a video that looks way worse than 144p while still being a 1080p, in fact, while still being a 4K video on YouTube if you so choose to watch it that way. And although that might sound crazy to a lot of people, let me prove it by right now lowering the video quality significantly. It looks kind of normal, right? Until we start moving around and then everything goes a bit insane. What is it that has caused the Minecraft to look this bad, which isn't actually anything to do with the game itself? We're playing regular old default vanilla Minecraft, but this is actually an issue to do with the way video is processed and the way we understand video quality, because most people have a misunderstanding that leads to all sorts of weird issues of marketing and whatnot. So today's video is designed to teach you how video quality works and why this looks so bad while this looks kind of okay. Why we can watch the sunset just fine, but then as soon as night comes, everything starts to become a bigger mess than it even was before. Why is it that, for instance, in the daytime, things look kind of bad, but everything is an absolute mess? It's hard to really discern anything that's happening on screen right now. That's something I wanted to explain, and the goal of this video is to help you understand why 144p or 4K or 1080p is not the only measurement of quality, and what the rest of this actually means. Because to simplify at the very start here, if you watch nothing else in this video, then all you need to know is that resolution, 144p, 1080p, etc., is the number that indicates how many pixels are on your screen. 144p being 144 on the vertical column, and of course 1080 being 1080. Basically, you get a bigger picture with 1080p than you do with 144p. And if you were looking at a still image, that would be the biggest thing that you need to care about. But when it comes to video, you're not just getting a still image, you're getting 24 to 60 in the case of this video every single second. Except that 60 images a second would be an insane amount of processing, so what instead happens is the video file, the video encoding process, tries to take those 60 frames a second, and instead of turning them into 60 images, it takes one image, and then it takes the next 60, and it works out the changes from that original one, and it saves those instead. The amount of data you give to work out the saving between frames is the quality that you'll get in a nighttime shot, or in terms of any shot. So right now, for instance, if we massively up it, if we take it back to pretty much our starting quality, wow, you can see things again perfectly clearly, I can see clearly now the rain has gone. But yeah, if we take things, down a notch, and then we have a lot of visual complexity, so we don't have much data to store that visual complexity, but we have a lot of it going on, you can see how, like, oh yeah, this is, this is hard to tell what's happening. They kill a zombie just there. Oh, geez, that's a creeper. But yeah, so that is because of simply you're saving the visual complexity between frames, but it gets a bit more fun than that when you really dive into it. And that's why I'm making today's video. I want to explain bitrate in a more kind of fun way, because we kind of just brushed on it on the last video talking about quality. I want to actually dive in and explain all the different sorts of qualities and why even if you stream, say, 4K Netflix, why 4K Netflix isn't necessarily a better deal than 1080p Netflix without knowing all the other details. I want to let you know why, for instance, Twitch looks so much worse than YouTube streams, even if you haven't noticed it, by slowly, gradually lowering the quality of this video over time. We're going to start with the full streaming quality that I usually start with. I use it for streaming and for videos. It's a little bit on the shorter end of what you'd expect for a video because you lose some stuff in the recording, but we're going to start with 10 megabits worth of data every single second for this video, so you can see there's enough data here that even if we spin around, even if we have all of this going on, the game can keep track of that because there's enough stuff happening. Again, 10 megabits, just to clarify, a bit is a single one or zero, a kilobit is 1,000 ones or zeros, a megabit is a million, and therefore 10 is 10 million ones or zeros to explain the differences between each frame as we go along, which is why when we lower suddenly from being 10,000 to being all the way down here at 5,000, you're going to notice that it looks mostly the same, right? You're going to notice how, like, oh yeah, things are still, it still looks like Minecraft. This is still a video on the internet. You might think your eyes are hurting you sometimes when there's a lot of complexity or, something confusing happens. For instance, if we throw some fireworks and we try to look at ourselves, if we go really fast and we see a lot of stuff and we spin around, then it might cause some issues sometimes, but for the most part, even at 5,000 kilobits, things are pretty much fine. So yeah, we halved the quality there, we halved the data required, and therefore the amount of your internet that we're taking up. But the revolution that made YouTube possible, the revolution that made any one of these streaming online video services that you might use on a regular basis, even if that's Instagram with the worst video player on the internet, but no matter what video service you use, they realized very early on that downloading full videos was super costly, and it's basically unaffordable for any amount of revenue you'll get on the other side. The thing that makes YouTube so special is they worked out how to compress that video as much as humanly possible so that it, instead of like earlier, again, right now it looks exactly the same, but we've halved the bitrate. And even if we do something crazy, even if we take it down another 20% to the point where we're now at 30% of the original, it's going to look pretty much the same to most eyes. There's going to start to maybe be some artifacts in some places. You might spot some things on the screen if you're really into looking for those things, but most people, especially, nowadays if you're looking on a phone, if you're not technically inclined, if you don't care about that sort of thing, this is going to look like normal, right? Or, we used 70% more data, 70% more hard drive space, and then internet, and then all these other things for my normal videos compared to what you're seeing right now, and you might not even notice the difference. And yeah, this was the kind of bet, the gamble that sites like YouTube took, that people wouldn't notice the difference in file size, and we could use that to therefore stream it over the internet for free. And although they started with just 240p and then 360p, they slowly started increasing this data amount, because when they started, the numbers would have been way lower for how much data they can transmit, and the standards were way lower too. People didn't need 1080p full HD videos, but now, the game that YouTube plays is they're really, really, really good at compressing really big videos that can be not just 10 megabits a second, which, like I said, is on the lower end of what people would usually expect, but instead you might be into the hundreds of megabits per second. There are even, certain things that are gigabits per second for, slow motion, stuff like that. And yeah, it's fascinating that that can be stored on YouTube in such a small format. Also, let's go to the end and let's stop talking about the miracle of YouTube, because, you all kind of know it maybe, and even if you don't, maybe you don't like YouTube, maybe you don't want to hear about their miracles, you might prefer Twitch, because a lot of people like to, imagine there's two online video sites for gamers, there's YouTube and there's Twitch, so people ask me, therefore, why don't you use Twitch? And the simple explanation is that on YouTube, I can stream at that full quality we started with. On Twitch, I'm limited to this quality right here. That's right, somewhere between about 20 and 35% off the base quality we start with, which is even then a compromise based on what we could do if my internet wasn't limited. This is what things will look like, and again, this looks like a normal, perfectly, great Twitch stream to most people's eyes, but the interesting thing about this is when we start to get, really complex things going on. So again, if we're looking at something normal, like just this, these white blocks over here, if you don't know, I have a lot of quartz placed in my end. I'm trying to make a big white map. If you haven't seen my big white map, let's show you right now. In fact, here you can see I'm trying to make a map which is just going to be entirely white, which requires a lot of quartz, and it's something I work on slowly over time. It's a fun thing we might have to finish one day, but you can see that, like, by the way, let's put this in my offhand so you can see it at all times, but you can see that, look, it updates slowly as we go, but you can see looking at this that, like, oh yeah, this is really easy, like, this would work on Twitch. Toycat, this is proof that you should stream on Twitch, but if we try to get some more visual complexity going on the screen at one time, you're going to notice how all of a sudden that isn't the case. And the reason I've come to the end to prove that point is because this is something that's really common, even with, actual TV services, because Netflix and HBO and even services that have the streaming capacity to provide as much as they can, they know that if they give half as much data, it doesn't provide half the experience. This is why so many famous scenes, Game of Thrones is a recent example, but any, night scene in any movie is going to look terrible because the differentiation between the different black pixels isn't necessarily stored at those lower values, which is why if we start spinning around right now, my flint and steel with my black map on my left, with the blackness off the end and an enderman in front of me, you're going to notice how all of a sudden, like, yeah, the colors just, this could look way better. To go back to normal quality all of a sudden, you're like, oh yeah, you can hopefully notice the difference there, because there is a key difference between how, like color information is stored when you have more data to do so. To differentiate differences between much smaller colors, you need much more data, whereas when you've just got a white and a blue and a yellow on screen, or, simple colors that you would expect in the overworld, for instance, you don't need that sort of data. So, and also Minecraft, I would say, as a whole, is a game that really doesn't need as much data as many other games out there, because there isn't much visual complexity on screen, because everything is block sized. There isn't like one pixel that's going to be slightly different than the rest sometimes. No, everything is a voxel. It consists of a lot of pixels of mostly the same color. They are admittedly complex-ish textures, but there are a lot of, textures that are going to be roughly the same. Looking at this sea of glass, you don't need to see the individual blocks, and like over there, in fact, you can't even see them, right? There's nothing there. So yeah, to keep things simple, that is how your bitrate relates to what your actual quality of a video is, far more than your resolution does, because admittedly having a 1080p video is always going to be better than a 720p one, roughly. The reason that most people stream at 720p on Twitch is because when you have a limited bitrate, it actually makes more sense to have less pixels, but to have better, data rate between those pixels. And in case you're curious as to, again, to bring that back to our initial example, basically, if you are going to have only a certain amount of data, then you can store And to bring that back to our initial example, think about it this way. You can have a certain amount of pixels on your screen at one time, and you can have a certain amount of changes between those pixels. You can pick the number of pixels, but you have a fixed amount of changes between them. You want to have as few pixels as possible so that you can have the most data stored in those changes. And yeah, that might sound like an overly technical explanation, but just in case it is, then how about we put it this way? If you can have, too much of one thing and you therefore have less of another, would you rather have a perfect square or cube or whatever made of quartz blocks, which is going to be a really nice type of block, but you're only going to have so much of it, or would you rather have much more and, an actually filled map or something like that, but it's going to be made out of snow blocks instead? If you don't know, snow blocks have a very slightly different white, or at least I assume they did until just now. On the map, it seems snow blocks have the exact same, whiteness as, the quartz does. Unless I'm crazy, do you spot the difference? Anyone watching this right now? But, looking at the blocks themselves, quartz is a much higher quality white than, snow blocks is. At least most Minecraft players seem to think so. And that's a good analogy to this, maybe. I'm trying to make this Minecraft related, okay? Would you rather have... Would you rather have more blocks? Would you rather have more quality, more detailed, more precise blocks? And that's kind of what people on Twitch and YouTube and all sorts of other streaming sites are deciding all of the time. And you know what? But for the purpose of today's video, we need to have the same number of blocks. This video is staying at 1080p, no matter how low down we go. And again, even when we've gone down to 1,000 like we have right now, 10% of our, starting/normal quality we stick with, it's like, oh yeah, you can already see that, like, yep, there is a downgrade here, right? Like, things are going badly sometimes. But if we take things even lower, because this video is kind of fun, but then we can take things to 8%, and you'll notice a downgrade from that to that. And then we can take things down to, you can probably understand where this is going. But, things are mostly fine. What we're here in the end, like, it's rough, but it's watchable. But let's go back out into the overworld, because we ran out of nether quartz to place this. By the way, in case you're curious as to why we're placing this, it's because I want a map that's entirely white, so I can place it and have entirely white walls without having to waste quartz and stuff. It's a really wasteful proposition, but I mean, like, isn't this video a wasteful proposition for your time? Hey, there we go. That's a high quality way to insult the audience and imply they shouldn't be watching a video. High quality pro YouTube strats right there. But no, let's go back to the overworld after we've watched the credits, and let's show you that this 6% that was like probably okay in the end is just horrendous in the overworld. And in case you're curious as to why that is, it's because of all of this rain. See, the funny thing about video, amounts is, like, even though we're talking about percents of absolute quality, because, that's how we're kind of setting things up, the truth is different videos, different movies, different everything requires different bit rates. The reason that Netflix, the reason that YouTube don't tell you exactly what the bitrate is, they won't give you a precise number, is because it isn't a precise number. To be a really clever system, you need to adjust all the time, because this same thing that, might have looked okay at best sometimes in the end is just a horrendous mess here at nighttime while it's raining, because rain represents a lot of different particle effects happening all over the screen at once. The screen is covered in changes, and the algorithm just can't keep up to date with it, so let's go down even lower just because, who doesn't like to have a bit of fun? Here is 4% of our default quality, and again, I can't actually see what this is outputting to right now, but my understanding is that there is just a mess on screen that no one can understand, and yeah, that is, especially when we're moving, because there's just too many changes happening that can be reasonably kept up with 4% of the quality. So yeah, one of the reasons that you'll never hear a bitrate etc. from Netflix is because of from YouTube, is because they need to, adjust that based on what's actually happening, because they know that, again, you can compress some stuff really far down, some stuff can't be compressed whatsoever. Like this scene right here, oh, it looks kind of okay again, right? Like, oh yeah, this is kind of fine. When I stare at this ball, things look okay, but it's when we move around and do stuff that you need to up it again. And yeah, that's how you can save a lot of stuff with video, because there's a lot of pictures happening in video at the same time, and trying to work out when there's a lot of complexity between pictures means you need to raise the quality, and when there's not, you need to lower it. But I said today's video was going to go below 144p, so here we are now at 2% of our base quality, and again, immediate downgrade you might notice. While we're sitting here, it's mostly okay, right? But when we start moving, okay, there we go, things are kind of rough again, and then we can just finally end things up with 1% of base quality. Oh, it seems as though midway through this, I thought that the software would let me go to 1%. It doesn't. We've capped out at 2% of that base quality. So yeah, in case you're curious, it's OBS. They have a little thing where you can lower the settings settings as you go along. And yeah, this is 2%, which is, you know, like maybe fine sometimes when we're looking at a wall, but when there's complexity, when we're flying up and down, like we need to do in Minecraft, and especially in any other game, then things start to get a bit rougher. So yeah, how can you make a video that's worse than 144p? Because 144p is only half of the equation. The other half of the equation, you know, that's the number of pixels on screen, but the way more important factor is how much detail is given to those pixels changing. Because again, in the same way, I can make a 144p image that is literally just a black or white screen. In fact, this Minecraft map is a 128p image off a white screen. It doesn't really matter because it's an image. There's no complexity there. When you start to it only matters when you start to add more detail, because a 128p screen off a, you know, white image is going to look exactly the same as a 128p, a 1p screen. Just literally 1 pixel will look the same as 128 if they're all exactly the same. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe this made some sense. Maybe it didn't. Maybe you just enjoyed seeing a video look really bad because, I mean, there's me saving your data again. Good guy, Toy Cat, right? But either way, I hope you all enjoyed this thing. Hope you learned something about video encoding. And yeah, in general, I guess have a nice day. Or have a bad one. I mean, like, it doesn't really matter too much to me. But either way, goodbye.